On Mixer, I am known as 8-Bit Blonde.
I go by Captain 16.
I am Gouda.
Hyperchucks.
PT Barpun.
Backdraft.
I
And
Mixer.
Booyah.
My mixer name is Tazar.
Rim-AG.
Cabby.
Terminator.
Mix defer.
I am sorry about your cats. It's not like I'm actually sorry about your cats.
Pirate King.
Magnetron.
Damn it, Rooster.
My boomstick. I know.
I am Mixer.
Yo soy Mixer.
I am Mixer. That was bad. How about one more? I am Mixer.
I am Mixer!
I am Mixer.
And I am Mixer.
Right, what else was it? Spelling.
M.
I.
X.
E.
R.
And now we'll do one more.
M-I-X-E-R.
M-I-X-E-R. All right, we're done.
Hello and welcome, everyone, to the first episode of our Microsoft Studios live stream. I'm Sam Nylen, and today we're talking about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. We've got two guys who know this new title inside and out, Dan Smith, our senior producer here at Microsoft Studios, and Mark Coates, the executive producer here at Microsoft. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, thank you. It's a huge honor to be here. I think Mark and I, we didn't even know this room existed in our building, but this is like amazing. You guys, what you built here is awesome. So, yeah, we're just happy to be here. We brought a build with us.
All right.
And we got things and stuff to talk about.
Yeah, excited to show off the game and talk a little Ori.
Maybe a little bit of Ori, just a little.
Yeah,
all right. So we're excited to kick off this new week. It's going to be a weekly stream, and this is the very first one. So we're kicking it off with a really great title that everybody has been super excited for. We've got the full E3 demo, so if you missed it there, now's your chance, and we'll be here to answer your questions. So be sure to jump in the chat and let us know if you have any. And finally, there will be some Ori trivia, so be sure to test your knowledge live. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at that E3 trailer for Ori and the Will of the Wisps. All right, that was our trailer. So, you guys ready to watch some gameplay? I think we're going to go ahead and start up our demo, and Dan is going to play through it, and Dan and Mark will chat about the game.
That trailer's so good, man. Every time I see it, it's just like see something else new.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I definitely we owe a big shout out to everybody from Moon Studios who's likely watching right now. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into making the assets to get them ready for this E3. I guess it might be worthwhile if we talk a little bit about the road that we've gone through to get to this E3.
Yeah.
So it was the last E3 we actually sort of let the cat out of the bag with the title, and the treatment that we went with there was it was very like environmental. We had these panning shots of the environment, and we wanted to really like with 100%, just hit that emotional chord with everybody. And even with the live performance of Gareth Coker on stage,
that was incredible.
We just really wanted people to feel something and celebrate the artistry of not just Ori but games. It was I think a proud moment for us.
Oh, for sure. I mean, setting that tone is so important with Ori. I mean, it's all about the feels, and so. Yeah, I think that definitely did its job. But this year we need to do something different.
Yeah, I think people would have been like, well, what the heck? If we didn't show gameplay, they would have been wondering, like, what's going on here? So I think everybody, pooled all their talents together and really pulled something together that's pretty special. And we tried to stitch together a lot of cool new features that'll be in Will of the Wisps and really pack it all into a very, very compact build. And so, yeah, it was great. We had a good response from this E3, and it was a lot of fun to be there.
Yeah, it's true. You bring up a good point. I mean, that trailer is really chock full of a lot of information. It's the kind of trailer that's worth sort of dissecting, because you get a lot of little hints about what's to come in Will of the Wisps.
Yeah.
And so, I think it did its job to show off the gameplay and show off some of the features. And some of those features we'll show here. And a lot of times, we get questions about that trailer. It's like, yeah, but what part of that is actually in the game? It's like, no,
how much
everything.
Everything engine versus like in gameplay, yeah.
That's right.
Even those cinematic moments, it's all completely rendered out of the engine. So.
Yeah. So speaking of the trailer, though, did you guys mention how many iterations? I know this came up at E3. It was one of the things that was talked about. How many iterations that trailer went through before it actually made it up on stage?
It's thousands.
Just countless.
Just one or two.
Yeah, the effort that goes through just to refine that down to what it finally is shipped at is just incredible to behold. Yeah. But hopefully everybody enjoyed it, and as much as we had fun making it, hopefully I'm a good time taking a look at it.
I think the first thing, if you're an old Ori fan and you missed out on the E3 stuff, I think the biggest thing you'll notice right off the bat is kind of how different and how far we went with combat. So you'll see Ori here is swinging a sword. You'll probably also saw me shoot a bow. At the end of the first game, you place Sign back into the spirit tree, and so. There was a lot of head scratching originally, like how would we do combat then? Would Sign come back, or how would we change things up? And so we sort of chose to take a different path, and I think we also felt like a little bit, in Blind Forest, combat was sort of a secondary to traversal, and so when Thomas Mahler and his design crew they were looking at ways to sort of elevate and I guess sort of equalize the combat with traversal. It was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if like Ori actually had spirit weapons at his disposal?
Yeah, and so Dan, you should show off a couple different moves. I saw another enemy there, and it's like, in the first game, you really had sort of limited ability to attack, and like Dan's saying, in the second game now, Ori can wield all kinds of cool things. Like here, he's showing off the Spirit Sword, and. This gives you more tactical options and makes the encounters with the enemies a little bit more intentional. So you can sort of choose to address the enemies in different ways. And if you should show the menu where you can select the different. So here he showed off the sword, but he showed off the bow, but you can actually switch to the hammer. And all of these have slightly different mechanics associated with them. But they're fully supported. Like a lot of what Thomas has talked about, kind of taking the game to the next level with Will of the Wisps is just the animation. Every single new weapon and many of the different abilities all feature entirely customized animation sets. In Will of the Wisps, where in the first game he was rendered mostly through 2D sprites. In the second game, we've gone to a full 3D treatment, even though we present the game in 2D. And so that allows us to do much more with animation.
Yeah.
And so you see the movement of Ori is very seamless, just as expected in terms of traversal, but it also blends seamlessly between each move.
Yeah, and I guess, if you're to break it down a little bit further and talk about it in slightly more technical terms, the original game was 60 frames a second, but the sprite animations were actually in 30. And this time with a full 3D pipeline, even all the animations are in 60. So there's quite a bit more fidelity this time around, just in all of Ori's sort of intricate actions and attacks, and it's cool. But I think the big thing to note is that, like, we also identified that a lot of the Let's Plays through the original Ori, through streaming things, Mixer and Twitch and stuff, a lot of the playthroughs were very similar to each other. And so we definitely think that, with the whole spread of all these different weapons and spells and abilities that you can switch, and you can actually just switch to right on the fly.
I like the burst.
We think that a lot of people will sort of have very different and diverse playthrough experiences, which is great. I guess another thing we should talk about here quickly is there's a couple of new abilities that we showcased at E3.
Yeah, Grapple.
Yeah, so Grapple is it's one of those things where we're like, how cool would it be? Oh. How cool would it be if you were actually able to use a grappling hook? I may need to restart the build here. We might have encountered a bug here. Yep.
Oh, hey, that's the bug I ran into.
Yeah, we did.
That's all right. Just
happens.
restart. We're ready to start anyways.
Yeah.
Game dev's
we
not an exact science, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Mistakes
what we're
happen.
showing is still just parts of the game that are still under development. So it's expected that these kind of things will run
For sure.
into.
I do love the point that Dan brought up, though. That's one thing I was going to mention, was that having all the different abilities lets you kind of play the game your way. There are some people that like to get up in front and, hack and slash and just, push their way through. There are other people that like to stay back and, do damage over time kind of thing. So it kind of gives you all those options of different things you can do and make the game play through it how you want versus how the game expects you to play through it.
You're dead on. That's something that we spent a lot of time with Moon Studios kind of talking about after the first game. I mean, it was super well received, and we're really honored with the reception from the fans and the trade media from the first game. But Moon Studios always wants to strive a little bit higher, and so do we. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is try to make the game what we consider more accessible to a wider range of players. And like some people have talked about how the game can be quite challenging at times, and so it's like, well, what does that even mean? It's challenging, and it means a whole range of things. It turns out some people get lost, some people have trouble just navigating, doing the Twitch gameplay. Some people have trouble figuring out the solution to a given puzzle within the game.
And there's always a water temple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Always a water temple.
The Jinsu tree. And so the idea was like, well, how do we make the game more accessible then? And one of the ways that you do that is you give the player more agency. You give them more options in terms of how they equip their character. And by doing so, it helps them sort of shore up maybe some of the weaknesses in play that they may have, or embellish some of the strengths. And then that way, through customization, it makes the game a little bit easier to get through.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're excited about that, and it seems to be panning out in some of the early testing that we're doing.
Yeah, I also think it was pretty critical in Blind Forest that a lot of the traversal abilities were dimensional. Yep. So not only could you use them to sort of, traverse across the world, you could also use them for combat and for a number of things like that.
Oh.
So.
Good. This is going well.
Yeah, we seem to have a problem with our kit here for some reason. Let's go ahead and try and restart the kit.
So why don't you guys want to do some Q&A while we're waiting? While we're trying to load that back up, answer some fan questions?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah,
because I've gotten some questions in from Twitter, so we can go ahead and run through some of those. Let me pull up the list I had pulled up. There have been a lot of questions about, I know you guys are excited for the release and all that. We're not talking about that other than 2019. That's what we've said. When we have more information, you guys will be the first to know. But beyond that, what about soundtrack? That's a big one that people apparently like what Gareth has done with the Ori music for some reason. It might be kind of good. So people are really looking forward to a soundtrack and wondering if there's any information on that.
Yeah, honestly, Gareth is a rare breed. He's
a ton of fun if you meet him in person, by the way. Ton of fun.
He's a lot of fun to work with. I think something that's important to note in his work style is he actually likes to contribute and play builds with the developers he works with from the very beginning. And it's not just like he does a quick fly in and writes music and then he's gone. He's there throughout the whole process. And so I think as a result, he's really able to like tailor a lot of the music very specifically for the game. And it's fun to watch. He's a fun guy to work with. We also acknowledge that the soundtrack, it was successful. It's probably one of the highest awarded elements of the first game. And, we want to do a soundtrack again.
Yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer to bring Gareth back. We were so happy to be working with him again. He's just so talented. And the music associated with Ori really became a big part of its identity. And we feel like that's going to be the same thing for Will o' the Wisp. And, so when it comes to like the soundtrack in particular, if you're talking about like a separate product where I can go and buy the soundtrack, we don't have any details to announce around that today, but people love the first one, so we think people are going to love the second one, and we really want to do something special around that as well.
Cool. All right. So there was one that came in over Facebook. This is from Twitter from C10 Unicorns. 10 Unicorns, I think. They want to know if Ori has hooves. Like little horse and goat hooves. Yeah, I would probably just power it off and back on.
So Ori does have hooves. I don't think that was totally apparent in Blind Forest.
It was never a thing I ever wondered about, but somebody wanted to know, so let's tell the people what they want to know.
I think especially it's a lot easier to pick up on now, especially in the E3 demo, because we're running at 4K, and so maybe a little bit easier to see. It's funny, we've had questions in the past like, well, what is Ori?
Right.
So Ori is a forest spirit, but you can also draw comparisons to like he's a rabbit, goat, a squirrel.
A little bit of everything. He's a forest creature.
Yeah, a little bit of a blend of everything. So yeah, no, it's a great question, and that's always fun. And
I love questions like that. I think they're kind of.
Yeah, actually, Matt Booty the other day asked me, he's like, does Ori have hooves?
All right. So there's another, like a little more technical one from Young Chomp. He asks, how difficult is it to keep things fresh gameplay-wise? Like, did you have a lot of ideas that you couldn't include in Blind Forest that were moved into Will o' the Wisps? Or did you have any interesting ideas that were scrapped? Like, how does all that factor in? Obviously, you're not going to get too much information, but you will get some.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I think like a lot of sort of creative endeavors like that, that go through ultimately some sort of editorial process before they finally come out the other end. Ori's no exception. Games are no exception. A lot of stuff is left on the cutting room floor, so to speak, and you hone it to perfection to get the what you think is the best possible experience.
Dream big and then have to pare back as you go, rather than add on, how should we make this happen, and this kind of looks tacked on after.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so some things fit, some things don't. But just because something doesn't fit perfectly with the first kind of iteration or the first thing you're trying to do doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea. So some things go in the category of like, we tried it, but it just didn't work out, and maybe you never see that again. Other things are like, wow, this isn't perfect fit for this right now, but it's still pretty fun and cool. And so yeah, certainly some of the things that we'll be showing about Ori in the future came from ideation that started way back in even early parts of when we were working with Moon Studios on Ori.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was originally some ambition to expand combat a bit further in the first game. I think ultimately design favored kind of the fluidity and simplicity of a lot of the controls. So that is something we definitely wanted to bring back. And, it's definitely there. We just want players to have tons of options in Will o' the Wisps.
Yeah, and one of the things, like a lot of the themes, the world of Nibel is really large. We're trying to create a robust kind of epic, if you will, environment and world that Ori resides in. And so some of just like in the first game, we're going to have themed areas, each with their own kind of visual, audio, and gameplay identity. And so, some of the ideas around these areas in the second game actually I remember talking about as themes even in the original
Blind
game.
Forest,
So
yeah.
we're really happy to kind of revisit them.
I think that kind of helps, like, when you have ideas that carry over, it's a good way to to continue. Like, it shows the content, like the continuation of it, like the themes carry over and everything. It's nice when it's not a sequel that's just something completely separate but still follows.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
When there's elements of the first that tie into the second, that's always very nice.
All right,
and
we're
it
back.
looks like we're back on, guys.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go
Sweet.
ahead and switch back over to show off some more of the gameplay and some grappling hook with Ori and Dan.
Yeah. So this is Grapple here. Again, I think what I was expressing before is that a lot of the traversal abilities, they can be used in combat. So you can see I can actually leash myself onto this guy.
So that was something I didn't even think of when I was testing the build.
Yeah.
And I first saw that somebody at E3 was playing, one of the guys was playing the demo, and he got near the end of the demo stage, and he had one of the guys on the wall, and he bumped him with the sword, and the guy went flying, and then he leashed himself to him, and then he just used it and it blew my mind, because it was like, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
It was really cool to see.
Yeah, we try to, that's one of the things that we talk a lot about with Moon, and Thomas is a big fan of, is trying to introduce elements, different abilities or shards that have dual use, like they can be used in different ways. And so anytime that we can make it something have multiple sort of uses, it just expands sort of the diversity of the gameplay that you have at hand. And so
and just how people engage too.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see. Oh, I never thought to use it for that or whatever.
Another big thing that we're really excited to kind of show off when we debuted at the show is this idea of NPCs in the world. In the first game, I mean, a lot of what Ori is about is these beloved characters. People really get this strong affinity with the characters and these really emotional responses to them, and through the telling of the tale, they go close to them. And we just thought there was a huge opportunity to kind of do more with characters in the world. And so, throughout Will of the Wisps, you'll run into different NPCs that you can talk to that sort of help you on your journey in the game.
Yeah, I mean, they not only add just color to the world, but it's like they're actually very functional. They'll offer you quests and interesting rewards, things like that. So yeah, we're happy with how that's really shaping out. I mean, like you said, Mark, people really attach themselves to the characters. And so yeah, we just want to have more of that. We just want to have more of what people love. So I think this guy needs some hammer time.
So this is the build that was on the floor at E3. So if you were there, this is the exact same build that you guys got to play. But this is for those of you that weren't there. We're showing off this one has a lot of the new combat abilities are showing off, as we've mentioned. But there's also, now if you notice Dan is jumping, there are blocks that will disappear from underneath you. They do regenerate. But yeah.
Yeah, those are cool. I mean, another thing that Moon likes to talk a lot about is just creating, in platforming games, sometimes you have platforms that just appear to just, hover in the middle of the world with no contextual integrity, and
right.
So they really do a great job of trying to tie in every element that you interact with in the world to some sort of believable aspect of the world. So here, even though those platforms they serve the function of being able to be used as platforms, they're shifting sands that tie into the environment of the windswept wastes. They attach to these branches that are in the tree to form the actual platforms. They bust away when you land on them. So the physics allows you to interact with them in a way that's kind of believable. And so it really sort of just creates a foundation for you, the player, in the world that makes it more believable.
Yeah, and the tech team at Moon, they've really outdone themselves with a lot of touches here. Everything in the environment is really just alive. You see, even when I'm jumping on these platforms, how things kind of shift and bump. And that's one thing. Like in Blind Forest, the world was relatively static. And so that's another thing I think the tech team just saw as an opportunity is let's just raise the bar here. Let's make the world feel like it's living and you're really interacting with it.
Yeah, much more granular and detailed and complex. Like even over here on those bridges, you can see that when Dan jumps on the bridge with Ori, it dynamically reacts to Ori being on there. Yeah, the shifting of the ropes, the shifting of the bridge itself. Like the level of detail is much higher in the second game than the first game.
Amperfell would like to know if you can open the map when you hit a safe spot. So the map will look familiar. It looks, I mean, if you played Blind Forest, it should look very familiar. The map style, at least.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, we're bringing back certain elements in that, and then you may have seen also on there. There's other things like different quests that you encounter. Maybe when you talk to an NPC in the game.
Yeah, the quest system's all new.
And that's all new. And this is maybe not what it'll look like in the final version of the game, but the idea of providing additional information to the player on the map menu, having quests that you can go on that are maybe a little bit off of the golden path. Is an interesting and important part of the design of the second game. We definitely want to respect all the tried and true and really important elements of making a Metroidvania style game. So retraversal is a big part of that.
Yeah.
But we found that players, they really wanted to immerse themselves. Like you spend so much time going into an area, finally kind of mastering an ability in the area, and then the next big objective is then put in front of you as a carrot, and that's really important. But some players just kind of want to stick around in there for a little while, and so now with these optional quests, you can kind of do just that and gain some benefit from doing it as well.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. What another thing that's really hard is to bring a demo of a Metroidvania game to a show and have people walk away with the same experience. And so, we just thought, well, let's not do that. Let's actually give somebody, let's give everybody like a nice chunk of an environment to really just explore. And there's tons of hidden goodies actually throughout this demo. So we actually expected people to walk away with just slightly different experiences from the show, which was quite cool.
Yeah, and they did, and that made it more interesting, I think. Oh yeah, here's another NPC character. This is Lupo. So this guy is actually going to be a recurring character throughout the game, where you run into him in different places. And here, when you run into Lupo, he offers to sell you a map. So in some ways, similar to the original game, if you purchase that map, it'll illuminate more of the detail of the region that you're in. Similar to the map stone,
right.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I like that there's a purpose to collecting the Spirit Shards, and that now there's a reason to resource gather. Because I'm one of those people in platformers that I must collect every coin. I know they're here. I need to collect all the things. So when I see stuff, even if I didn't need it, I still go over to get it. So having something to use that on, I find really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an important part, right?
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the good stuff. So I mean, Dan just found his first major ability called Burrow. So you should talk a little bit about that and show that off, Dan.
Yeah. So Burrow is kind of one of the highlighted abilities of E3. It allows Ori to actually go and traverse and retraverse through sand and honestly another soft environment. It just feels super fluid, Art and Tech did such a great job at doing sort of this randomized trail behind him. Actually, I remember there was one particular build where Ori felt like he kind of drifted. It's kind of like Tokyo Drift a little bit when he corners.
That made hitting those, I ran into those little alligator things so many times on that one.
Yeah, and I just please keep it like that. That is amazing. It feels really good. It actually adds some challenge and just, I think, just some really good context to the feel. So an important design philosophy of Moon to call out is that I think we've always made it a really important design aspect to really make controls be relatively simplistic, but more importantly, very fluid. So I have a dash on my right bumper, okay? They've actually also gone ahead and married the Burrow ability to the same button. So all within this same button, I'm able to dash out of the sand, jump back in, dive. It's very kind of like Echo the Dolphin. It just feels really smooth. It's just super, super fun.
I also like that on the Burrow, you actually don't have to hold down any button, but just point the direction you want to go. That's it. I didn't realize that at first. And I was like, man, holding down the button is really obnoxious. And then I let it go or something, and I was like, oh, this is way easier. I don't know why I didn't try that.
That's exactly right. And then so you can see that this is another interesting thing. So it's not only do we use the sand as ways to block off certain elements so you can't get to until you get burrow, but anything that's made of sand in the environment can be interacted with using burrow. So some of those platforms that shifted away previously, now you can actually burrow up through as well, and then it gives you sort of an extra boost to enable you to reach higher areas or traverse the environment a little bit differently. So again, it's kind of like, adding layers of discoverability around the use of a single ability is important and interesting.
Yeah.
I look forward to the I burrowed into the spikes montage that will be inevitable from somebody. Probably
awesome.
me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now we can actually go back through some of these environments and, we can go back to the start of the game here and start of the demo and actually get through some of these original areas, sort of burrow back through them. And like we said, not only are these abilities used for traversal, they're multifaceted. So I can actually knock these guys out of their shells. See, I'm not able to actually do damage until I can, sort of knock them out of their shells. And
Will they get back in the shells?
No.
Okay.
That'd be cool though. That's a good idea actually.
I literally just thought of it watching the guy crawling.
Yeah.
Like, can he get back in there?
I like that.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh yeah, so you found the needle that
Right.
that Talk was looking for.
When we talked to Talk, he's like, "Oh, I can't find my needle." So now we found it.
Yeah.
And just like the original game, there's going to be a ton of hidden areas, things just off the beaten track that you can find and explore. So, we're trying to, motivate players to explore every nook and cranny of the game and reward them for doing so. So, Dan's going to go into this area that is kind of hidden at the very beginning, and this will give us a chance to talk a little bit more about another really important element of the game and the demo that we debuted at E3, which is the Spirit Shards.
Yeah, so we're kind of changing things up a little bit. In Blind Forest, there was a linear progression where you'd get Spirit Light that acted as experience points, and then you'd level up, and then you could spend your level up points on a sort of 3 linear paths up a skill tree. This time, we're actually going to change things up a little bit into what we're calling Spirit Shards. And so as of right now, if you look on the bottom, I can equip up to 4 shards. I'll find these shards all throughout the world. I found a compass shard here, and this gives me a passive ability where now I actually, if you look up at the top right there, I actually have a quest tracking marker. So I actually don't have to go back into my menu. I can kind of see where that's at all times.
I was going to point to it on screen like
I know,
like
hey, it's right here,
guys.
I was about to do the same thing. But yeah, that's just kind of a basic, simple mechanic, but it's kind of cool, right? That it's attached to these shards, and then it gives Dan just an indicator of the general direction of, oh, that's where I kind of need to go on my main quest right now.
Because there are sometimes in platformers, like you said, there are platforms in the middle of nowhere, like, which way do I go? But hey, the arrow says that way, so let me go that way.
Yeah.
Let me go in that general direction. Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Make you feel like you're on the right track, and
yeah.
And so there'll be dozens of shards in the game, but only so many slots that you have to equip those things.
So you have to choose carefully.
Yeah, so this is actually just another system in the game where we feel people will approach it a little bit differently.
Make the game their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of touches on what we talked about earlier, the idea of customizing the way that you play. And so by changing the loadout, you can literally change the way that Ori is equipped.
I'm so excited to see speedruns like this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's going to be amazing for the
incredible.
speedrun community for sure. I think you're going to be blown away by the creative ways that they sort of use the different abilities and the combination of shards that you can attach. And I think it's also important too to point out that this is still in development. So while for the purposes of the demo, we had 4 fixed shard slots. We still haven't settled on the exact number.
Yeah.
And we expect, I think you mentioned, we expect to have dozens of different shards that can be combined in different ways to create hundreds of different combinations. So yeah, we're excited about that part, and we think it really changes the game in an interesting way, but yet allows us to retain a lot of the same feel that people, I think, fell in love with the original.
Right. Somebody actually has an interesting question. I don't know if this is something we can really get into, but they're asking, since Sign was Ori's main source of damage in Blind Forest, how does Ori acquire his combat abilities in this game? Is that something we can talk about, or is that something you have to wait for the game?
Well, I think Yeah, we haven't. I don't think we're going to talk about exactly how you might begin the game and whatnot.
No, that's fair.
But I think that suffice it to say that similar to what you've come accustomed with in the original game, you'll be able to find new abilities, some of the key abilities as you journey through the game.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to embellish some of the primary abilities that you have, like the Spirit Sword, Spirit Bow, Spirit Hammer, etc., using some of the shards that you find.
Okay.
So we're not speaking today specifically about exactly where you find them in the game, but that gives you a general idea.
So buy the game and play it and find out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and stay tuned. I think is a big thing. I mean, we hope to talk more about the game as we.
I just thought it was an interesting, he brings up a good point. Like we don't know, and then just suddenly. So.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to show you guys something. So I actually picked up my favorite shard in the demo, which is this Splinter Shard.
Nice.
I saw one person out of 3 days at E3 pick that up. And it was only because I showed him where it was.
Nice.
Because he was close. He could see it on the map, and I showed him how to get there.
There you go.
So it's quite cool. I'm actually able to, sort of amp up my bow in particular. And any projectiles. This works for any projectiles. So, like, for instance, I'm also using the spike, which is more or less a spear that Ori throws down. If I have Splinter attached and I use that, boom, 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 I'm able to throw 3 spears at once. So
how does it affect the little bombs?
Yeah, you'll throw 3 bombs. A lot of people got accustomed to Light Burst from Blind Forest. So yeah, it'll
I love the
throw out
bombs.
3 bombs.
That was what I did a lot at the demo. I would just stand back and throw bombs because I think they're pretty and I just like the explosions too. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's hugely useful. I mean, you're not attacking any enemies right in here, but if you were, you would see how quickly you can dispatch them when you got a powered up Splinter.
Oh yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
wild.
In fact, like, and then even Splinter itself, right, can be powered up.
It can. So that's actually a really good point, Mark. So a whole another, I guess, layer to the Spirit Shard system is that Spirit Light this time around, it's currency. So, if you think about it, I can actually take this currency and actually upgrade. So you see over there in the left where it says upgrade, I'm going to actually go ahead and pump some points into this. This makes it a little bit stronger, which is great. But we want to go crazy here, okay? So let's go ahead and level this up one more time. This is going to actually up the amount of projectiles. So we're all the way up to 5.
To 5 now, yeah.
Oh, and then they come back down too. That was cool.
Oh yeah, there are projectiles in the world.
Yeah. Something there. I'm sorry. I'm sidetracking a little bit. But there is something I'm super proud of with the tech and art team at Moon. So this is all new. You might have noticed like the lighting got a pretty big upgrade.
Oh, for sure.
And these guys actually, I mean, it's almost like all the pain that Disney went through with making some of their first films. So they've actually gone through with every texture. They're painting light masks in like 6 different directions. So they're able to actually cast light maps across the environment. For instance, if light comes from this direction, then it would be lit this way, or that direction it would be lit this other way. And it's really, really quite beautiful.
And I think that was one of the things that Blind Forest had some like room for improvement with. There were parts of it that were very dark, very hard to see, like weren't necessarily clear. So I think there's been some huge improvements on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good area to kind of showcase that. And it's like, you're right, it is improved over the first game, and yet it's done in the style because we want to retain that sort of unique stylistic treatment. And it's like, so all the technical things that Dan was talking about, it's like now you can get sort of real-time lighting effects.
Yeah.
You know, so when he fires off those projectiles, the light seems to travel along with the projectiles, the arrows, and illuminates the foreground and background elements as it travels. And so it creates a really cool looking effect and something that really takes it to the next level. Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of Ori fans in the chat, so we're going to go ahead and throw up some the first set of trivia questions for you guys.
Yeah,
so some of them are going back to Blind Forest. So we're ready? All right.
Just in time.
I love trivia.
Kind of come to the
Just
end
making
of the
sure
demo.
we're ready to go. Oh, all right. You got about 10 seconds before the first one pops up on the screen. And Joe's trivia muscles are ready.
Okay.
I mean, Joe has no excuse.
Thanks for the mixer cup, by the way. It's great.
All right, here we go. So the first question, which character stole the water vein in Ori and the Blind Forest? So your options are Ori, Gumo, Ludo, or Naru. And chat's saying Gumo, so I think I'll. Apparently, I don't get to vote my own poll, but so yes, it was Gumo. So for question 2, what new area are we featuring in the E3 2018 demo for Ori and the Will of the Wisps? The Forlorn Ruins, Blackroot Burrow, Windswept Waste, or the Hollow Grove? I mean, if you've been watching, that one should be pretty easy. There should be no excuse on that one. It was on screen. There we go.
It's a bit of a tongue twister too.
Yeah, I like to throw alliteration style. Windswept Waste.
These are great. Who wrote these questions?
Oh, I don't know. Dan, do you know who wrote them? So this one, the next one is going to pop up now. Where is Moon Studios located? Vienna, Israel, Canada, or all over the world? This one might be a bit of a trick question.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good one, but a little bit of a trick question. So, do you want the answer?
Yeah, Moon Studios is still a global distributed studio.
Yep.
It's pretty fun jumping on calls at all hours, and so
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, they don't have like a single location where they all go into work. So when Dan says distributed, he's talking about like literally there is no central office. They have separate people all over the world that coordinate through online tools and meet up occasionally at events like E3 for the first time ever.
So keep that in mind, folks. All this magic that you're seeing is made from people's living rooms, from anywhere from Argentina to Israel to Mexico to the U.S. to Austria.
Yeah.
Literally everywhere in the world, all done. Everybody's working from home and making games like this.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty fun stuff.
So, all right. You want to play a little more? You want to do a couple more, maybe chat questions? We got a little bit more, couple more questions we can go over. No more trivia. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
So we
no
had
worries.
3 more trivia questions, but the trivia system is having technical difficulties, so we will be done with that. But I will do some fan questions instead,
Yeah,
which is
sure.
fine.
That's great.
Let me pull up the other ones. There was another technical one I liked. Actually, let's go to the easy one first. From Facebook, Soyari Cleric wants to know if Ku is a male or female.
That's a good question. I actually don't think we were asked that once over E3.
No.
So this might be kind of an unveiling, but Ku is female.
Heard it here, he heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, and kind of in light with that first question I asked about what carried over from the first one. Somebody is asking on Twitter, Stone Visuals wants to know, were you inspired and have you been inspired and taken any influences from any other successful games in that same genre during design and production? Are there any mechanics left out of the original game that carried over to the first one? So they kind of marry together a little
question,
bit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'll answer parts of the question.
Yeah,
and
I mean, I
jump
think that's
in
fair.
too, Dan.
Sure.
I know one way that Moon Studios oftentimes answers these kind of questions about inspiration is just they talk a lot about film influences, film references. So, especially Thomas talks about early Disney films, the sort of very awesome combination of story and narrative. Along with the beautiful presentation, the animated style,
Right.
Using, characters that maybe aren't human, but have human characteristics, and using those to tell an interesting and sort of timeless tale. So, I think, they've also mentioned at times other Japanese anime and studios that build that content like that. So, for example, Studio Ghibli. And so, I think, I've heard them mostly talk about, films when we talk about sort of the presentation of the game and sort of the emotion that we're trying to evoke out of people who play the game. But then, of course, on the game side, there's obvious inspirations from many of the amazing Metroidvania-style games that have come before Ori. I think.
I mean, and they've even hired people that are literally known for creating another Metroid remake.
That's
right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's literally there aren't not Arma. I forget what the exact project was, but they literally hired a guy who was a level designer for literally another Metroid remake.
Yeah, that's right.
So-
Yeah. And other platformers,
Yeah,
you know, that
EMR
have,
too.
have kind of built that. And also like, you know, we've had a great opportunity to work with Ken Lobb here as one of the creative directors
Ken is great.
at Microsoft, who worked on some of the original Metroid titles as well. And so I know he and Thomas have had great design discussions around sort of corollary elements associated with Metroidvania. So those are some of the things I think really that serve as inspiration for Moon Studios and us as well.
Sure.
I think Blind Forest, like a lot of lines can be drawn to games that Moon was inspired by, like Super Metroid and A Link to the Past.
Yes. I've seen people like tweeting me that picture of the Triforce.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, Moon, I see you. Like, so is this really a Zelda influence?
Yeah. And then, you know, I think that the most critical Castlevania is probably Symphony of the Night.
Yep.
And, you know, of course, we love those games. There's just been so many great newer Metroidvania games created, too. I'm absolutely loving Hollow Knight right now.
I've heard that's
so
got,
excited
like,
that came on Switch.
Dark Souls influence, and I don't want to stress myself out that much yet.
It's a big game. I was actually shocked at how big it was. So, yeah.
So somebody wants to know, and I don't know if we actually have an answer for this, but do we know how tall Ori is?
That's a good question. You know, I don't know that we've ever given out a measurement, like a actual literal size. We have built in the past, models where you take all of the characters so that you can kind of place them next to each other, so you can have scale in the context of them side by side. But that I don't know that we've ever actually talked about the exact size.
Not in terms of like
them.
metric or
you
know,
they're basically just trying to figure, is he tiny, is he kind of like average size? Apparently they're an artist and they were kind of
that's awesome. That's a really good question. We should actually think about that and whether we want to actually establish
maybe add it
that,
to an FAQ on the website.
I wonder what do they think? What do people think? How big is Ori?
What do you guys think? How big do you guys think Ori is? Tell us. All right, who's your favorite character from Blind Forest? Friend or good guy, bad guy? Like, who's your favorite?
Oh man, that's a good question.
That's a really tough question. I like loving kind of mother figures, so it's probably Naru for me. Yeah. And especially, I love the fact that in the definitive edition, we kind of opened that up and explored more of her background and the relationship with her father and how the father was sort of concerned for her sort of creating new and branching friendships. And so I think there's still a lot of mystery around Naru. But ultimately, I think she's a really powerful and important character to the games, and I'd say that's probably my favorite from Blind Forest.
Naru is cool.
I expect she made everybody cry when they played Blind Forest.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm sure.
If not, you have no soul.
Yeah, I really liked. I like the antagonist from the original game as well. You know, I mean, Kuro is just a really amazing character, I think, and then the twists in terms of how you view the character as you journey through the original game. I guess game's been out a long time now, so maybe it's not too much spoiler alerts, but the ideas around self-sacrifice and these sort of things that are a part of the story, I think were really interesting to me, and the way that they were unveiled kind of made a powerful impression. So
absolutely, yeah, and especially in the storytelling, I thought it was very powerful in Blind Forest how many of the characters, they're neither good nor evil. Yeah, they're just maybe at times misunderstood, and then their sort of their real nature kind of comes out later. So, because if you think about that, Kuro wasn't really ever evil. It's just her eggs were affected, and so she's like, "Who did this?
Yeah,
wouldn't you be angry? I'd be angry."
That's like someone coming in and taking everything out of your house. Like, where'd my stuff go? Yeah.
Yeah. So and even Gumo at one time thinks that
he's my favorite.
That's your favorite.
I think so. He's a unique character. I love like his movement and just I don't know. he's different. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting to see somebody carrying around, this globe and like wall climbing. And it's just he's kind of adorable in that really weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like Gumo.
Yeah.
I think Gumo's cool too.
Yeah, and there's this brief period where Gumo thinks Ori is trying to do harm.
That's why he's running
Yeah.
away from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Establishment of that friendship was a key point in the story too.
Yeah.
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 We need to figure out some way to do cool Gumo like stuffies or some kind of cool.
Can you
cool
imagine a Gumo plushie
merch.
just be all legs?
I know, right? Yeah.
Speaking of merch, if you want to pick up your own shirt, you can do that on the Xbox Gear Store. I don't know if I have a link for it.
Yeah, Mark and I didn't intend to completely coordinate the sweatshirts we were wearing today, but
Yeah, our
Oh,
uniform.
I have mine. I have mine with me as well, but I figured I would go with the branded shirt. So I will get a link for the chat. But do you guys have? Oh, somebody was asking. Like, were there any specific design or game, like any design choices that went into deciding what kind of weapons Ori gets to have versus not? Like, were there any that were like, hey, this would be really cool, and then you play it, and then you're like, oh no, this is not cool. Like, what kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we first started talking with Moon Studios, I mean, honestly, about the idea of Ori wielding a weapon, it's kind of like, what? That seems like not what you're used to. How's that going to fit? And so I think they did a really good job of kind of integrating the idea of a weapon with the concept of Ori. And so it feels almost more like an ability than it does a piece of equipment, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I think we tried to make sure, and I think it was a key part of what Moon's thinking was as well, is like, how do you make this idea of wielding things a part of Ori, who's sort of the spirit character? And I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to hear like what fans think so far. But to me, once we saw it in action, once we had a chance to kind of play with it, once we were able to sort of feel how seamlessly you can kind of join one maneuver or one weapon to an ability or to a navigational ability, it does fit. It does fit really well, and it sort of adds a new dimension to the idea of Ori.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly the most critical thing is that the first game, the freedom of motion and fluidity of navigating through the environments, it was important. The game just felt really good to run fast,
Yeah.
And when the concept of like swinging melee weapons and things like that came up, that's maybe just like a minute of worry. Like, well, just as long as it doesn't like sacrifice that fluidity. And the design team at Moon, they're just top notch, and they absolutely took all of that to heart, and I think every bit of this feels just like Blind Forest did in terms of how smooth it is and how fast Ori is and how quick some of the traversal abilities are. If not more so than Blind Forest, you just feel very nimble, very quick.
That's something a lot of people were commenting on, is that it felt smooth, it felt quick, it felt good.
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite things about the demo and like the game so far is that it honestly feels like a natural evolution to Blind Forest versus, like I said, like I alluded to this earlier, but there are some sequels sometimes you pick it up and you're like, oh, you have to relearn everything. You don't have to relearn everything with this one. It feels really good getting into it and like swinging the sword. It feels natural. It feels more like this is what belongs.
No, that's so cool to hear.
So.
I mean, I know that was a big focus. It's like, it's easy to say, but you want to always, every game wants to create super intuitive feeling controls, and but I think the game has become renowned for that. Just the precision that you can control your character with, and the intuitive nature of how the abilities are mapped to the controller. Yeah, I mean, we saw it at E3. Like, people picked up the game, and so we saw that people who had played the game previously, they were able to pick it up, and they felt immediately familiar with the general control of Ori. And then new people that had never heard of Ori before and had a first chance to try the game at E3 through the Will of the Wisp demo, they also could pick it up and start to play the game and slowly learn some of the more intricate maneuvers. So I think so far we're on the right track there, and that's definitely guiding us, and something we're keen to keep all the way through.
I want to tag something onto that because you're talking about just the general public and fans playing the game. I do want to say, like, I try and say this anytime we do a stream or you know, we have any different audience who's listening to these type of things we do. But Moon Studios and Microsoft Studios, we are strongly fueled with this particular IP by the response from fans. You know, there are many people who post Let's Plays, reactions to the trailers, feedback and forums. You know, it's a big part of, I think, what keeps everybody going. And we just like really from the bottom of our hearts really appreciate a lot of the love and fandom around Ori. It really makes working on this IP very special for me, and I'm speaking for everyone who touches the game in any way, shape, or form. Sam, I know you're newer to working on this as a community manager, and
I love it though.
You love it. I know you love it because you tell me that all the time. So.
I mean, what can I say? Have you seen the rest of my titles sometimes? Yeah. They're not the easiest communities. No. The Ori community is by far the sweetest community out there.
It's fun.
Everybody's super excited about everything all the time, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's fun. And, you know, I mean, we're trying to marry a lot of things with Ori games. We're trying to marry the best gameplay we know how to put into a game. We're trying to marry the best audio we know how to craft, and the best art, the best tech, and everything. So, you know, just the responses we get from fans, it's critical to what we're doing here, and anyway, we love it. So.
Yeah, we love hearing all the stories that we get from Sam, you know, passing along to us.
Guys, look at this really cool fan art people have done. This is pretty much most of my day, by the way, looking at all the really cool fan art.
It's just cool to see it, like people relate to a game and the characters so strongly, and it sound, I don't know, maybe it can sound cheesy to say or whatever, but people really do have strong feelings associated with the game, and when we hear cool stories about how the game inspired somebody to finish, you know, school, you know, training to be an artist, and this gave them the motivation to continue on that journey, and you know, some of the things like that.
That letter made me cry.
Yeah, or there's some amazing stories out there that we've heard from the fans, and we get to hear those, and we pass those along to Moon Studios as well, and it makes a difference, you know, like it's just an awesome positive feedback loop that we love to get.
So I think one of my favorite things about the game as a whole, the franchise, like the series, I guess at this point, is that like there's something in it for everybody.
Yeah.
No matter, I can talk to, you know, 5 different people, and they all may have, they will all like the game, but they'll like it for different reasons. Some people love the level design, some people love the characters, some people love the artwork, other people are over the moon with Gareth's music. There's just so many different aspects to the game that everybody likes that it's just incredible. Like I love watching it because there's so many different things that people like about it, and it's just hard to not be excited with them.
Totally.
You know, so I think that's part of what makes the community so happy is that they all just kind of, everybody's happy all the time, so everybody just keeps feeding off that.
Yeah, it's energizing, right? Like those reaction videos. I love seeing those reaction videos.
The guy from last year's trailer.
Emotions,
it's Ori.
Yeah.
That guy was great.
Yeah. So anyway, and we definitely acknowledge that, and we also acknowledge that people want to replay Ori. So with Will of the Wisps, again, I hope you've seen some elements and designs in this demo that'll, you know, there'll be a reason to go back and do a playthrough using the hammer, and then to go back and use this set of spells, or try and, you know, you can actually custom map on the fly any weapons or spells you want. And so I want to see people who can get through the game only using spells, no weapons, or, you know, it's going to be fun to see.
So one last question on that. And I don't know if this is something, but people are asking, is there going to be another one life mode? Is that something that's carrying over? Apparently, there's some people that really, really liked it.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that's
well, we added in the difficulty selection with Definitive Edition, right?
Yeah.
And we've
including
seen,
one life.
Including one life.
So we've seen some good responses to that. I don't know. I mean, we haven't decided, I don't think, at this point. Okay. But if you love it and you want to see it, we want to hear about it.
We want to hear about it.
Yeah, we definitely want to create ways for players on the high end of the spectrum of the game, in terms of skill, to also be challenged in playing the game.
Yeah.
And so one life mode is one way to do that. Yeah. But there are others.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up our demo and our first show. So everything you've seen here is what we showed at E3, so it's like you guys were there with us. Go ahead and if you're interested, stick around next for tips and tricks. They'll be here, mixer.com/tips and tricks. That begins at 3 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday. This week, I think I've been told they're going to be talking about some Nier Automata, and there was something else. I forget what it was now. But so if you like Nier Tomato or Nier Automata, Nier Tomato, whichever one you want to call it, stick around and watch that. If you want to keep up with us, we'll be here every Tuesday at noon. Go ahead and click that follow button, and you won't want to miss next episode 2 next week is going to be checking out some Phantom Dust with special guest Adam Eisgreen, and he's going to get to teach me how to play because I have never played the game. So it should be fun.
Nice.
Thanks for hanging out, guys, and have a great day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Mixer.
Yay.